everybody, this is another quote video for you guys. This is our fourth quote video, so if you haven't done the previous ones, go ahead and check them out. They're really good ones, and there's a writing assignment with each of them. This week's quote is by Elie Wiesel, and here it is. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. So that's our quote for this video. A little bit of background information about Elie Wiesel is that he actually is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He is a Holocaust survivor. He was in Auschwitz in the concentration camps as a Jewish person, and he wrote many books about his experience. One of his most popular books about his time in the concentration camps is called Night, and he was well recognized for his writing, and he also is known as an activist, and he really supported the idea of people respecting one another and of peace and of respecting people for their humanity was a really big part. He said, no matter what kind of person you are a human and you deserve respect at that basic level. So Elie Wiesel is a really cool and interesting person, and I would encourage you guys to do a little bit of research on him. He went through a lot in his life, and I think it's important to have a little bit of context about who he is and who he was before we analyze this quote, okay? So now, thinking about the experiences that he went through and reading the quote one more time, it starts to kind of settle in and make a little bit more sense, right? So he says, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So let's think a little bit about that idea of indifference and what does it mean to be indifferent, right? If you're indifferent towards something, that means you don't care about it, you don't notice it, it doesn't matter to you, or just you are completely unaware of it, right? So thinking about maybe Elie Wiesel's experience in the concentration camps and during the Holocaust, where there was a lot of discrimination towards Jewish people, he's saying the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So we talk a lot about this and how it is important not to just stand by and allow things to happen, right? I've had a lot of big discussions with you guys about how if you see something wrong going on and you don't say something, you're also contributing to that wrongness that's going on, right? You are a bystander and you're allowing it to happen, which is just as bad as the person who is creating that negativity, right? So that makes me think a little bit about that with this quote. But I also love this quote because he talks about the opposite of art is not ugliness. The opposite of faith is not heresy, which heresy is just the opposite of, it's kind of a word that's a little bit anti-religion. So if you think of faith and believing in something, heresy is believing in nothing or believing in the opposite, right? And then he also ends with, and the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. So, thinking about the effect that we have on others and thinking about our lives and the choices that we make, I want you to realize that the opposite of good is not always bad, right? Those are both strong, intense feelings, right? This good and this bad. And you need the good oftentimes to understand the bad, right? We talk about this idea that you can't ever be truly, truly happy unless you've experienced what it's like to feel truly, truly sad, right? Sometimes in life, this contrast between what's going on with us can open our eyes to how wonderful things are. And it honestly makes me think of what we're going through right now. Me being quarantined and being inside all of the time makes me so thankful for what I do have, right? It makes me so thankful for my job and that I get to be in a job where I get to interact with my students every single day and see them. Wow, that's something I'm so missing. It makes me feel thankful for my family because I'm really missing my family right now. And it makes me feel thankful for the little things like going to the grocery store and not worrying about getting sick, or going to a park and walking around, right? So we want to keep in mind that just because something is negative doesn't mean it's the opposite of something positive. And this is quite a concept to wrap our minds around. So for this week's quote, for this week's writing assignment, I'm going to give you guys a lot of freedom. I just want you to write me a paragraph or two about what you think this quote means, because it's a lot to process. So one way you could do that is you could break it down line by line, right? And you could discuss, what do you think the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference means? And then go to the next one and talk about the difference between art and ugliness, and then go to the next one and talk about faith and heresy, and then the last one, which is life and death. Okay, so that's one way to kind of break it down. Or if you feel like this quote relates to your life in any way and you want to kind of discuss that with me, that's great as well. Kind of just going to leave it open for you guys to write what you think. But the prompt for those of you who need a little bit more structure is to read this quote and decide, what do you think it means, and what does it mean to be indifferent? What is that word, indifference? Why is that maybe worse than hate or worse than ugliness, right? What does it mean to be indifferent to something? All right, so before we go, I'm going to read the quote one more time. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness,